everybody. Ted Haggard here from the Storehouse Church in Colorado Springs, which is the house church ministry of St. James Church. If you'd like to see our website, it is thestorehouse.homes, thestorehouse.homes. And you see the website there at the bottom of the page. Hey, today we are in Proverbs, the 7th chapter, and Proverbs, the 7th chapter is a great chapter for all of us. Actually, I would encourage all of you to take this month and just study one proverb a day. And there are 31 proverbs, 31 days, and it works out great. And it's a great infusion of wisdom into you and your family, because every one of us, every single one of us, are growing in foolishness or in wisdom every day. And what we do and what we say either communicates wisdom or communicates foolishness. And so some people just kind of throw up their arms and they become fools, and they expect the government or society or the neighbor or whatever to do their bidding, and they become increasingly selfish. And other people grow in wisdom as they go through the years, and they continue reading and growing and developing in wisdom. It's very interesting. One of my boys graduated from Harvard University a few years ago, and I went to that commencement address. And as you know, the president of Harvard University is also the head clergy person for Harvard University. And at commencement, she wears the robe of a clergy person, a spiritual leader. And she said, in this commencement address, she said, great knowledge can be very, very dangerous if you don't have a spiritual basis. And she talked about the importance of a spiritual life, which is not emphasized at Harvard University. It's a university. But so they emphasize knowledge, but there at commencement, she was saying, you be sure and add a spiritual dynamic to your wisdom, or you could become a very powerful, very evil person. She didn't word it quite like that, but I thought about how all of us are appalled at what the physicians did during the Hitler regime. And the tests they performed on people, which, by the way, we still use that information today. It was good information to gain, but they gained it through the horrible abuse of human beings. Right now, we have our own physicians for the first time in my lifetime advocating, as a majority of the physicians, advocating to have the freedom to kill women's babies and having the freedom to mutilate children without their parents' permission. And we just had an account in the news where a little 6-year-old boy in the first grade exposed himself standing in the lunch line. And when he went back to class, before the teacher got there, a little 6-year-old girl performed a sex act on that little boy. That's never happened, as far as I know, with 6-year-old kids in America. But as soon as we start to say, no, the school and the doctors can do things without the permission of parents. See, we're used to good parents. They're reacting to bad parents. And so because of it, we have a clash of cultures going on, which is why we all need to read the book of Proverbs and be involved with the book of Proverbs to gain wisdom, to know what's appropriate for a 6-year-old. Because as soon as we say only the school can decide what little children are going to be deciding about sexuality, then as soon as we say that and disallow the parents' involvement, then we're going to have incidents like what happened in that first grade classroom. And for that to go on in a first grade classroom is a new landmark for America that we all better be aware of. Well, in Proverbs, the 7th chapter, it talks about that. And here it says, follow my advice, my son. Always treasure my commands. So what advice does a parent give? Think through or make a list right now. Stop the video and make a list. What do parents say? Make your bed, clean up your room, brush your teeth, live a moral life, come home on time. Nothing good happens past midnight. When things get confusing with your buddies, just come home. All right. And here it says, follow my advice, my son. Always treasure my commands. Obey my commands and live. Guard my instructions as you guard your own eyes. So guarding your own eyes. So how are these kids finding out what they're finding out about? Because all of their phones have pornography on it. Because all of them are exposed to things that my generation wasn't exposed to until we were in college, really. And here they are in the first grade watching things on each other's phones or on their parents' phones that are just amazing, amazing things. So we have an issue to deal with in our own heart. Here it says we guard our own eyes. So what do we guard them from? How do we do that? That needs to be discussed as a family. Tie them on your fingers as a reminder. In other words, the propensity to forget wisdom is easy. To be a fool is easy. To be wise takes intentionality. All right, write them deep within your heart. Love wisdom like a sister. Make insight a beloved member of your family. So here it's talking about wisdom and insight, which requires thinking about it. Let them protect you from an affair with an immoral woman. Now, the immoral woman is a symbol of sin, or we would say nowadays an immoral person, because it's not just an immoral woman that would drive this. It's the immorality amongst men as well that would be responsible. So we would say, let them protect you from an affair with an immoral person, from listening to the flattery of a promiscuous person. While I was at the window of my house looking through the curtain, I saw some naive young men, and one in particular who lacked common sense. In other words, he was dominated by sensuality. And naivety is very, very interesting, because a person that's naive is a person that either lacks the wisdom from experience or lacks the judgment that comes from experience, or lacks the ability to observe and learn from others. And here's one of the easiest markers for a person that's lacking the ability to observe and learn from others: somebody that doesn't go to church or doesn't go to a believer's meeting, because they're not learning. Some people would say, oh, I don't read the Bible, it's an archaic text. Really? Is this irrelevant? Is this text irrelevant to any of us? Here it says, while I was at the window of my house looking through a curtain, I saw some naive young men, and one in particular who lacked common sense. Who would that be? Would that be you or me or us or a neighbor or the kid down the street or in an average high school or college classroom? How many of those boys and girls are naive, looking at one another with sensuality or foolishness or just personal pleasure as the goal of the whole thing? Here, sometimes we think of a promiscuous person or a person that responds to flattery. And listen, I've had great success in my life, and I've had great embarrassment in my life. And I guarantee you, there are always people around that'll flatter you. And if you start believing what they say, you are walking into a trap. Now, sometimes it's sincere appreciation. That's a wonderful thing. But other times it's flattery to entice you into something or into something that they're interested in for you. So here's how I think of it. Some people think about life. Other people are in need of entertainment all the time. And entertainment is fun, but it might be a distraction from your ability to think about life. Because what you do today and what you say today will determine what your life will be for the rest of your life. Because today is the only day you have to lay the foundation for the rest of your life. So very, very often, Gail and I will get up where I'm going to be 67 next month. She's 66. And we'll say, let's let today be the first day of our life. So that'll influence maybe our diet, or maybe who we're hanging around with, or what we're doing with our time, or the believers meeting that we have and the importance of it, or whatever. Here it says, I saw a naive young man, and one in particular who lacked common sense. He was crossing the street near the house of an immoral person, strolling down the path by their house. It was at twilight in the evening as deep darkness fell. The person approached him seductively dressed. So some people say how we dress doesn't make any difference. Oh, yes, it does, because how we dress communicates who we are. All right. So seductively dressed and sly of heart. That's interesting. She was the brash, very interesting, rebellious, and never content to stay at home. Now look at those three characteristics: brash, rebellious, never wanted to stay at home. Why is staying at home a problem? Because it's staying at home where you become stable. It's your home that reflects who you are. It's staying at home where you think. It's staying at home where you read. It's staying at home where you decide what you're going to do in private. See, staying at home. The guy who produces this little 15-minute thing, his first name is David, and he's a wonderful friend, and we love everything about him and his family. And he had a major message when I think of his influence on St. James Church. One of his greatest influences was one day, didn't take long to say it. He said, if you get into a difficult situation, you probably ought to just go home. And I've thought about that so many times, about what our world would be if a lot of these folks, rather than going to the bar to spend some time or to wherever they may go, I'll let your mind do the work on that, if they just go home. Just go home, be around people that are interested in your future. Here it says in verse 12, that other person is often in the streets and markets, soliciting at every corner. I'm changing the she to a they because it's men just as much as women. She threw her arms around the other person and kissed them with a brazen look. She said, I've just made my peace offering and fulfilled my vows. You're the one I was looking for. And then she goes ahead, verse 21, so she seduced him with her pretty speech and enticed him with her flattery. He follows her at once like an ox going to the slaughter. This is a great chapter. Now, here we're talking about the difference between wisdom and foolishness. Every society in the history of the human race has wisdom literature. Every society also has characteristics of fools in a neighborhood. Have you ever noticed that the news organizations very seldom go into a bar and talk to the fella who talks there most of the time, to whoever's sitting around him drinking, and asks him for his wisdom on the economy or wisdom on political issues? Because typically, there are people that talk a lot that don't know much. And so every one of us have to decide, are we a fool or do we have wisdom? And godly people assume, church people assume, if they're godly, they'll have wisdom. It's not true. I know many godly people that are fools, and I have at times been a godly man and at the same time been a fool. And so every one of us have the ability to do that. So godliness does not equal wisdom. But wisdom, one of the elements of wisdom, is the fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord, not love of the Lord, not worship of the Lord, but fear of the Lord. All right? And God, the Bible says, invented or created wisdom. And we can appropriate wisdom if we seek her and find her and incorporate her, or we can be foolish with our lives, with our relationship. Yesterday, Gail and I went on a beautiful hike with our grandson, Emerson. While we were up there, there were some folks taking pictures of one another. And you know what I thought to myself? They were college-age students. And I thought to myself, the value of that picture will determine how they value that relationship and take care of it. Because those pictures are precious that they were taking. But if they betray one another, they'll tear up those pictures or delete them from their phone. Okay. If they handle one another wisely, they'll look at those pictures in 20 years and value them and treasure them. So wisdom is not God. Wisdom is created by God. I'm going to take just a few more minutes, a little longer than we usually do, so you can read about wisdom in Proverbs, the first chapter, beginning with verse 20. Here it says, wisdom shouts in the streets. She cries out in the public squares. So wisdom is calling to you, but so is foolishness. And foolishness will call to you differently than wisdom does. Here in verse 21, it says, she calls to the crowds along the main street, to those gathered in the front of the city gate. How long, you simpletons? By the way, in the old days, a simple person was a foolish person or a cognitively impaired person, a person who couldn't think through things. How long, will you simpletons, will you insist on being simple-minded? How long will you mockers relish your mocking? Think of how mocking is popular in our circles. How long will you fools hate knowledge? You have to have information. You got to know. Then you add wisdom to it so you can be successful. Lots of people with knowledge are fools. All right. Come and listen to my counsel. This is wisdom saying, I'll share my heart with you and make you wise. I called to you so often, but you wouldn't come. I reached out to you, but you paid no attention. Now, this is proof that wisdom is not God. Wisdom is created by God, because there'll never be a time when God will resist you. But wisdom will if you ignore her. You ignored my advice, wisdom says, and rejected the correction I offered. So I will laugh when you are in trouble. Wisdom will mock you as you ruin your life and your relationships. I will mock you when disaster overtakes you. See, God would never do that. God loves you. He wants the best for you. But if you reject God, you pay the price for your own sins. If you reject wisdom, wisdom will actually laugh at you as you make a fool of yourself. When calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster engulfs you like a cyclone, and anguish and distress overwhelm you, when they cry for help, I will not answer. These are people who've rejected wisdom. Though they anxiously search for me, they will not find me. For they hated knowledge and chose not to fear the Lord. So there is a time window for us when we can respond to the calling of wisdom. If we reject it, we become a community fool, and typically fools don't know they're fools. You just notice nobody cares what you think, and your own families don't respect you, but you think you're almighty. For they hated knowledge, they chose not to fear the Lord, they rejected my advice, paid no attention when I corrected them. Therefore, they must eat the bitter fruit of living their own way, choking on their own schemes. For simpletons turn away from me to death. Fools are destroyed by their own complacency, but all who listen to me will live in peace, untroubled by fear and harm. Isn't that encouraging? That every one of us can respond to wisdom and grow in wisdom starting right now. Or every one of us can decide, no, I just want to be a fool. I want to be selfish. I want to live my own ways. I want to go my own ways. I don't want to go to church and listen to that guy. I know more than he does or she does. All right. Think of that. So let's be wise. Let's make our families better families. Let's make our communities better communities. Let's make our nation a better nation. Let's actually be a blessing to the world by being here for our plus or minus 70 years, however long the Lord gives us. Let's do this, everybody. All right. I sure do love you. I hope the best for you. I want you to respond to wisdom. I want you to respond to life, just like me, my family. We have to make this decision every day. All right. It's not easy, but it is rewarding. I love you very much. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.